I am Jory Halston, and the night my sister got promoted for a job she barely understood, my $1 million app quietly hit 10 million active users. No party, no champagne, no phone call from mom, just a silent screen and a bubble of pride I had to swallow alone in my apartment, wearing the same hoodie I'd worn for 3 days straight while pushing bug fixes and deployment updates. My sister, Bristol. Yes, like the British town, because apparently that sounded posh. Got a catered celebration dinner and a 3-tier cake from our parents. Her new job? Project coordinator at some vague marketing firm run by her fiancé's uncle. She couldn't explain what her role was if you gave her flashcards, but she did learn how to say circle back and touch base with convincing confidence. Meanwhile, I just closed a partnership with one of the biggest telehealth platforms in North America, and not a single person in my family even acknowledged it. Before I tell you how a family dinner turned into the best-worst night of my life, let me know where you're watching from and hit subscribe. You'll want to see how this ends. Now back to that night. I scrolled through the user growth dashboard again, watching the numbers climb like they were trying to pull me out of that emotional hole. 10 million people, 10 million lives made better by something I built in a basement. But I knew better than to expect confetti from the people whose approval I stopped chasing sometime around the age of 12. That night, I didn't cry, I didn't rage. I just stood at my tiny kitchen island, chewing microwaved lasagna, letting the artificial cheese glue my jaw shut every time I imagined how Mom would downplay it. I should tell you, my family is complicated. We weren't broken exactly. From the outside, we were Norman Rockwell. Christmas photos in coordinated sweaters, Easter brunches at the yacht club even though we don't own a boat, and a rotation of humble brags about my dad's retirement fund. But behind all that was a quiet sorting system. A caste. And I was born in the wrong tier. Bristol was the princess. Blonde, blue-eyed, freckled charm who could lie through her teeth and still get dessert. I was the afterthought. I loved computers, hated small talk, and wore hand-me-downs from boy cousins without complaint. Mom said I was too intense, and Dad told people I was bookish. Code for, we don't know what to do with her. I never understood how my interests made me less lovable. I wasn't a rebel, I just didn't fit the script. While Bristol was doing cotillion and junior pageants, I was building a 3D model of a lung in CAD at 12 years old. My science teacher called my parents to say I might be gifted. Mom responded by asking if I could tone it down for Bristol's sake. That's the kind of family we were. So I grew into silence. I got good at folding my victories into polite conversation, tucking them between sips of wine like they were just side notes. Oh, I'm working on a little AI project, instead of, I built a diagnostic engine that flagged cancer markers with 91% accuracy. I didn't do it because I lacked pride. I did it because pride wasn't allowed unless it made Bristol look good too. Still, I kept building. First, small freelance gigs, then a full-stack developer job. Nights and weekends I coded on my own. I saved every penny. While Bristol was getting $1,200 handbags from Dad to look the part, I was buying ramen in bulk to make my savings stretch. Every cent I made, I invested into my app idea, a health management platform that connected underserved patients to doctors via AI triage, born from my frustration watching Mom struggle to find care for my grandmother. Nobody in the family knew. They just assumed I was playing around with tech like a hobbyist in a garage. That's how it started. And on the night my 10 millionth user signed on, I thought I might finally be done craving applause that would never come. I thought maybe I could be proud just for myself. But then my phone buzzed. Mom's name. I stared at it, already knowing she hadn't heard the news. Already knowing it wasn't a call to congratulate me. I answered anyway. Oh good, she chirped. You're coming to dinner next Friday, right? Bristol got promoted again. Of course she did. I used to think invisibility was a superpower. Like if I stayed quiet enough, worked hard enough, and kept my head down, eventually they'd notice me. Like some hidden gem they'd just overlooked. But in my family, silence didn't earn you reverence. It earned you erasure. I was 10 when I first realized I was playing a different game from everyone else in our house. Bristol had just won Most Spirited at her elementary school's field day. They gave her a plastic medal and a coupon for a free smoothie. When she came home, Mom cried, Dad filmed it like it was an Oscar speech. Meanwhile, I'd just received a statewide award for a science project on renewable energy that had gotten me a mention in the local newspaper. I handed Mom the clipping with a quiet, hopeful smile. She squinted at it. "Oh, sweetie, that's nice. Do you think Bristol would want a copy too?" That's how it always went. Birthdays were another category altogether. Bristol's 16th had a DJ, a custom cake shaped like a designer purse, and some kind of LED dance floor they rented for the night. Mine? A quiet dinner at Applebee's with a gift card to Barnes & Noble. Because books are your thing, right? I wasn't ungrateful, I just couldn't ignore the difference in effort, in enthusiasm. College? Same deal. When I got my acceptance letter to MIT with a full scholarship, I remember racing into the living room with the email printed out like a golden ticket. Bristol had just been accepted to a local community college and was crying on the couch because she didn't get into UCLA. Mom looked up at me, panicked, and said, "Jory, not now." I folded the paper back into my hoodie pocket. That was the moment I knew I'd have to start clapping for myself. Bristol dropped out of college a year later and took a gap year to figure herself out in Bali. I remember Dad calling it a soul journey. I was juggling an overloaded course load, a part-time campus tech job, and tutoring freshmen to afford groceries, and nobody asked if I was okay. But even with all that, I still wanted to believe they just didn't see me yet. Like if I just became undeniable, they'd have to acknowledge me. So when I graduated from MIT, early, I didn't send an invite to the ceremony. I just emailed them a photo afterward. It was me, in the rain, holding my diploma above my head like it was a lightning rod. Dad replied, "Congrats, we're so proud of both of you girls." Both. Bristol had just opened a vintage candle shop using $80,000 in startup help from Mom and Dad. It failed in 5 months, and they wrote it off like a lemonade stand experiment. I, on the other hand, was working 80-hour weeks at a medical software company while sleeping in a co-op bunk room that smelled like damp cereal. They never sent care packages, never asked about my work, never once offered help. But they did call to ask if I could Venmo money to help with a surprise birthday party for Bristol's dog. I sent $300 and told myself it was just easier. I started becoming their fixer, their quiet ATM. Mom needed dental work? I covered the gap insurance didn't. Dad's car broke down? I wired him $1,200 just in case. Bristol was going through a spiritual reinvention and wanted to take life coaching classes in Sedona? I footed part of the bill to keep peace. They always said thank you, and then forgot I existed until the next crisis. What hurt most wasn't the money. It was how none of it seemed to register as love in their language. Like their currency was attention, and mine didn't count. Eventually, I learned to stop waiting for the spotlight and became the power behind the scenes. I kept my name out of the headlines. I created aliases for my LLCs. I didn't need them to clap. I just didn't want them to see the full extent of what I'd built. Not yet. Not until I was ready to choose how the story ended. And then came the dinner. The one night each year where all of us, me, Bristol, my parents, the rotating chaos of her boyfriends or side projects, were expected to play nice over dry turkey and polite cruelty. I'd RSVP'd, maybe for weeks, but Mom called and confirmed it anyway, like she always did. "You'll come," she said, like a command dressed in a question. "Bristol will be so disappointed if you're not there." That was never true. Bristol didn't care whether I came, only whether I made her look good when I did, and yet, like some idiot Pavlovian experiment, I said yes. The night I realized my idea might actually work, I was sitting on the floor of my studio apartment, wrapped in a blanket that smelled like desperation and old ramen, staring at a blinking cursor in a sea of code. I hadn't slept in 2 days. My laptop fan sounded like it was threatening to explode, and I was shaking from too much caffeine and not enough protein. But I saw it. The algorithm had run. The AI had flagged a symptom pattern in a user report that matched a rare cardiac condition, and it was right. It had worked. My diagnostic engine had caught something a human doctor missed, and I cried. Not the elegant kind of cry you see in movies where one tear slides down a cheek. No. I ugly sobbed into a half-eaten protein bar and whispered, "Holy shit," about 17 times like it was a prayer. Not because I was proud, not even because I felt smart, but because, for once, I knew that what I was doing mattered. It started as a side project. I'd been working in a dead-end QA job, running regression tests for a medical software company whose back-end code was a Frankenstein's monster of patches and spaghetti logic. I'd spend hours fixing the same bugs caused by lazy architecture decisions made 5 years ago by developers who had long since quit. But I couldn't stop thinking. What if healthcare wasn't just digitized, but reimagined? So I started building. I bought secondhand servers from a tech surplus warehouse, learned back-end infrastructure from YouTube, read every white paper I could get my hands on. Nights turned into mornings. I barely remembered to eat. My friends thought I was ghosting them. My landlord left passive-aggressive notes about the noise from my keyboard. But I didn't stop. The app was originally called MedSage, but I rebranded after a few dozen people thought it was a supplement company. It became Eleanor, named after my grandmother, the one who died from a stroke after waiting 7 hours in an understaffed ER because her symptoms were dismissed as panic. Eleanor didn't just connect patients to doctors. It triaged, it learned, it flagged risk patterns using natural language input, so even tech-illiterate users could describe what they were feeling without having to know medical jargon. And behind it all was a neural net that got smarter with every interaction. The first time it saved a life was a beta test user, a 64-year-old retired teacher in Idaho who thought she had heartburn. Eleanor flagged her symptom profile and advised her to get an EKG. Turned out she was in the early stages of a heart attack. She messaged me afterward. "Your app saved my life. My son says thank you. I say thank you. Thank you." I printed it out and taped it above my screen. It wasn't long after that the calls started coming in. At first, it was smaller clinics curious if I could license the platform for in-house trials. Then it was investors, some real, some clearly sharks in blazers pretending to care about disruption. I ignored most of them. I wasn't interested in IPOs or tech expos. I wanted the product to be solid, reliable, life-saving. But one call changed everything. A mid-sized telehealth platform wanted to integrate Eleanor's triage engine into their existing service, and they weren't just offering a pilot partnership. They wanted to acquire. The number they floated made my stomach flip. I didn't say yes, not right away. I got a lawyer. Then I got a second opinion. I renegotiated the terms until I could barely breathe. And by the end of it, I had a tentative agreement to sell Eleanor for $41.7 million, with me staying on board as Chief Innovation Officer. But nobody knew, not even my closest friends. I kept it quiet, partially out of instinct, partially out of fear. Like if I said it out loud, the universe might hear and take it back. So I kept working, kept iterating, even after the deal was all but done. The announcement was scheduled for the Monday after the family dinner. That gave me 3 more days of secrecy. 3 more days of pretending to be the family failure. 3 more days of smiling while they made me feel small. When I told Mom I'd come to dinner, she chirped like I'd made her entire day. "Oh, Jory, that's wonderful. You've been such a little recluse lately, we miss you." I didn't correct her. I didn't say, "No, I've been busy building something that's going to change the future of medicine." I didn't tell her about Eleanor, or the acquisition, or the fact that I now owned more equity in a major health tech company than half of Silicon Valley, because I wanted to walk into that dinner one last time as the invisible daughter, and walk out as the one who finally stopped asking for their damn permission to shine. The day of the dinner, I woke up to a text from my project lawyer. "Contracts signed. Announcement goes live Monday 9 a.m. EST. Congrats, Jory, you did it." I stared at the message for a long time, not because I was surprised, it had been coming for weeks, but because it felt like holding a lit match to my past. There was no going back now. I was about to be a multi-millionaire. My app was going public. My name was going to be everywhere. And none of them had the slightest idea. I didn't tell a soul. I went through that Saturday like it was any other day, eating leftover pad thai out of the box, running code for a back-end patch, and pretending not to feel the weight of what was about to happen. There was an odd sort of peace in it, like knowing a secret you have no obligation to share anymore. I didn't need applause. I didn't even need acknowledgement. I just needed to make it through one more dinner. Still, I stood in front of my closet like I was choosing armor. I skipped the power suit. Too aggressive. The hoodie I loved felt like I was leaning into the caricature they already believed. I finally settled on a soft gray sweater and black jeans. Simple, forgettable. Let them think I was still floundering. Let them underestimate me one more time. Driving to my parents' house felt like descending into some alternate timeline, one where I never left, never built anything, never mattered. The closer I got, the more that house became a museum of my own erasure. The white shutters, the brick pathway, the stupid little lawn gnome by the hydrangeas, nothing had changed. And that, in itself, made my stomach twist. Bristol's car was already in the driveway. Of course it was. A pearly white Lexus SUV she got from Mom and Dad last year after she found herself through a Pilates certification she never used. I parked behind it and sat in the car for a minute, letting the engine tick down while I rehearsed my smile. The door opened before I knocked. "Jory?" Mom beamed, full of hostess energy and wine. "You're early. Come in, your hair looks different." "It's just tied back," I said, stepping into the house. I could already smell the turkey. Not quite done, but close enough to flood the house with that warm, cloying scent that made my chest tighten with memories of being talked over at every holiday meal. Bristol was in the living room, perched like a Pinterest model on the edge of the couch, swirling red wine and wearing a white knit dress that screamed, "I didn't lift a finger to help with dinner." Her newest boyfriend, Clayton, was beside her, looking bored and impossibly tan. "Hey sis," she said without looking up from her phone. "You still doing that app thing?" There it was. The ritual opener. "Yep," I replied, walking past her and into the kitchen. Dad was at the carving station, pretending to help. He gave me a nod like I was a coworker he barely recognized in the break room. We made small talk about weather, gas prices, and the local baseball team, which I haven't followed in over a decade, but none of it meant anything. It was just noise. I smiled, nodded, and held on to the secret in my chest like it was a diamond I'd swallowed. By the time we sat at the table, the familiar performance had begun. Bristol launched into a monologue about her recent yoga retreat in Sedona, complete with terms like spiritual reset and chakra detox. Mom gasped at all the right moments. Dad asked how much it cost, then laughed when Bristol waved him off. And me? I sat there, sipping water, thinking about how Eleanor's user base had jumped another 20,000 people since I left my apartment. They didn't ask what I'd been working on, not once. "Still coding?" Mom finally offered, with the tone people reserve for talking about failed hobbies. I smiled. "A little." Bristol grinned at her boyfriend. "Jory's always been kind of a hermit, super smart but like antisocial genius vibes, you know?" He chuckled. "Hey, every family needs a hacker. I let them have it, let them make me the background character one last time, because I knew what was coming. And there's something delicious about letting people think they've won the narrative, right before you flip the final page." The turkey was dry. It always was. Every year Mom acted like it was some kind of triumph, stuffing that poor bird with stale sourdough and rosemary, basting it in boxed white wine while humming along to Michael Bublé, and every year I chewed through it like punishment, chasing each bite with ice water and polite restraint. Dinner conversation was a minefield wrapped in a Hallmark card. It always started with surface niceties. How's work? Any travel plans? Is the app still going? But it never stayed there. The tone would shift just slightly, like an actor missing their cue, and suddenly we were in the gauntlet of subtle humiliation. "Do you have any users?" Bristol asked, raising her eyebrows like I was pitching MLM protein powder. "Some," I said, "here and there." Dad chuckled. "Still a little side hustle, huh?" I gave a thin smile. "Something like that." "Oh, Jory," Mom chimed in, slicing a too thick piece of turkey, "you know we just worry you're limiting yourself. You're so talented, but you always stay behind the scenes. Maybe it's time you think about something stable." Stable. As if I hadn't spent the last 6 years building one of the most stable AI triage platforms in existence. As if my bank account didn't currently have more zeros than Dad's retirement fund. As if I hadn't paid off their second mortgage in secret just 2 years ago because Bristol's wellness retreat business had tanked and nearly dragged them into foreclosure. "I like working behind the scenes," I said quietly. "That's our Jory," Dad said, laughing. "All brains, no marketing." They all laughed like it was a joke we'd agreed upon. Clayton reached for more stuffing. "So Bristol tells me you don't really date." "Oh, we're doing this," I shrugged. I'm selective. Bristol jumped in. She means she's married to her code. Jory's been like that since middle school. Remember the time she skipped the school dance to build a website for her science club? She was 12, Mom said, trying to defend me, but only added fuel. It's not like it was prom. Dad smirked. Honestly, that site was pretty impressive. A compliment? Wait. But you've got to come out of your shell sometime, he added. Life's more than screens. Of course. I sipped my wine and focused on not rolling my eyes. Colton or Clayton leaned back. I mean, everyone's talking about AI these days. You should find a way to ride that wave. I blinked. Yeah, maybe I should. Mom smiled like that was progress. Oh, that reminds me, she said, standing up and disappearing into the kitchen. She came back carrying a small cardboard box wrapped in gold foil. Bristol's promotion gift, she beamed, handing it to my sister. It's from all of us. All of us? Bristol tore into it, shrieking when she saw what was inside. A designer watch, sleek and silver, way out of any normal family's budget. Dad toasted to our shining star, and everyone clinked glasses. No one looked at me. No one asked if I was doing okay. No one mentioned the money I'd sent them to cover last year's roof repairs, or the birthday card I mailed Mom with a spa gift card that never even got a thank you. And yet, the moment Mom sat down again, she looked at me with faux concern. You know, Jory, she said softly, maybe this year you'll find your lane too. My fork stopped halfway to my mouth. My lane? I just mean, we want you to be happy, and it's hard to know how you're doing when you're always so private. You know, Bristol updates us all the time. We feel included. Bristol batted her lashes. I just want us to be a close-knit family. That was it. I put my fork down. So when I paid your overdue credit card bill last December, I said, looking straight at her, did that make you feel included? The table froze. What? She said, blinking. I Venmo'd you $2,300. You said it was for a rent emergency, but then you posted from Tulum. Silence. Mom cleared her throat. Jory, and the car repairs last spring, I added, glancing at Dad. You called me in the middle of a meeting, panicked, said you didn't want to ask but had no one else. I wired you $1,500 before I even hung up. I thought we weren't going to keep score, he said stiffly. We weren't, I said. But if we're going to talk about lanes, I figured I'd clarify which one I've been driving in. The air was brittle. Then Mom said it. Well, maybe that's the problem, sweetheart. You act like an outsider. Maybe it's time we all admit that's how you want it. There it was. The velvet knife. They didn't just overlook me. They decided I didn't belong. I should have expected it. How the mood shifted like a slow leak finally hissing open. The turkey turned cold on our plates. Wine sat untouched. Even Bristol stopped swiping on her phone. The air crackled with something both ancient and fresh, like rot unearthed from beneath polished marble. Dad was the one who finally spoke. We've been meaning to talk to you, actually, he said in that tone that always preceded a family decision I had no vote in. Now that everyone's here. Everyone. Right, like I was just another name on a checklist. Mom folded her napkin carefully like she was composing herself for court. We've been going over the family trust, she said. You know, it's been a challenging few years. With investments, the market, everything. I nodded, slow, controlled, letting them perform. And given the direction each of your lives has taken, she continued, we feel it makes the most sense to reallocate support in a way that reflects where the need is greatest. There it was. Wrapped in bureaucratic fluff, like an HR memo firing the intern they never paid. Bristol tilted her head, confused, until she saw the look on my face. Then she smirked. Wait, I said quietly, are you cutting me off? It's not like that, Dad jumped in. It's about focusing our resources. Bristol's building something real, Mom added, like I wasn't real. She's finally on a path. She has goals, a fiancé, a future. And what do I have? I asked, looking at them. Servers and silence? Mom flinched. We just think emotionally you've always been distant, and financially you've done fine without us. Right, because they never helped, not once. Bristol's in a critical stage, Dad said. She needs the support. Bristol leaned forward. I didn't ask them to do this, she said, but her voice didn't sound even remotely sorry. But I do think it's the right call. And this isn't about the money, Mom added quickly. It's about emotional investment. You don't include us. You don't trust us. You keep your life so closed off. How can we be expected to show up for a daughter who won't let us in? I laughed, not loudly, just once, a sharp exhale that startled even me. Let you in, I said. You don't knock, you don't ask, you take, and then you call me distant when I don't hand over the keys. Bristol rolled her eyes. God, Jory, why is everything a monologue with you? I think, Dad said, trying to regain control, it's best if we all take a step back, from expectations, from obligations. Just live our own lives. So this is official, I said. You're disowning me. Don't be dramatic, Mom said. It's not personal. But of course it was. It had always been personal. Every time they overlooked me, every time they told me to shrink so Bristol could shine, every time I loaned money or sacrificed sleep or bit my tongue just to keep the peace, I had made myself smaller, more manageable, less threatening, and this was my reward. I see, I said, standing up. My chair scraped the hardwood like a verdict. Nobody moved. I wish you the best of luck, I said, all of you. Bristol looked mildly alarmed. Wait, are you leaving? Yes, I said, and no. They stared. What does that mean? Dad asked. I looked right at him, my voice calm and steady. It means I'm leaving this version of the family behind, the one that only exists when I'm useful. Then, right on cue, like fate had scheduled it, with ruthless precision, my phone buzzed in my back pocket. I pulled it out. A call from Eleanor Legal Comms HQ. I didn't hesitate. I put it on speaker. Jory Halston? The voice said crisply. Just confirming that all final signatures were received. The press release for the acquisition goes out Monday at 9 a.m. Eastern. Congratulations again. We're thrilled to bring Eleanor Health into the Foldwell family. Silence. Thick. Stunning. Absolute. Bristol's mouth dropped open. Dad blinked like someone had slapped him. Mom looked like she'd forgotten how breathing worked. I ended the call and took a sip of water like it was just another Tuesday. You said I don't let you in, I said. That's true. I stopped trying. I looked around the table, each of them frozen in their own brand of horror or confusion. But just for the record, I added, while you were debating how to reallocate emotional investment, I was finalizing a deal that will revolutionize health tech for underserved populations across 3 continents. I picked up my coat. And I did it with no trust fund, no encouragement, no designer watch to celebrate my milestones. They said nothing. What about us? Bristol asked finally. After all you've done, you're just going to walk away? I paused in the doorway. I already did, I said. You just noticed. I don't remember the drive home, not in the literal sense. I didn't black out or anything. I just couldn't tell you a single song that played on the radio or how many red lights I hit. My body was on autopilot while my brain replayed the scene over and over, not to second guess it, but to soak it in, to feel it. The silence, the shock, the faces I'd been trying to impress for decades finally seeing me for the first time and realizing they didn't recognize what they saw. I thought I'd cry. I didn't. I thought I'd feel regret. Nothing. What I did feel, though, was something terrifying in its unfamiliarity. Peace. A flatline stillness in my chest, like the volume had been turned down on a life that had always played too loud in the wrong frequencies. I parked outside my apartment building and sat in the car with the engine off, headlights glowing against the brick wall ahead of me. I thought about calling someone, my friend Caleb, or maybe Priya from my dev team, but I didn't want to explain anything yet. Not until the dust settled into something more permanent than rage or disbelief. When I finally went inside, the smell of old takeout hit me like a hug. I kicked off my boots, dropped my coat, and collapsed onto the couch without even turning on the lights. The city glowed through the windows, soft and golden, indifferent in the best way. Then my phone buzzed again. Another call, this time from a number I didn't recognize. I let it go to voicemail, but curiosity won out and I played it back as I brushed my teeth. Jory, it's Uncle Greg. Look, I know things got tense tonight. Your mom's pretty upset. I think maybe you should apologize, not for what you've done, but for how you said it. You know how she is, just give her a call, yeah? I stared at my reflection, toothbrush in hand, foam dripping onto my pajama shirt. Apologize? They disowned me, and I was supposed to apologize? I laughed, hard enough to spit toothpaste onto the mirror. I left the message unanswered. Instead, I did something I hadn't done in years. I called Caleb. He picked up on the second ring. Tell me you finally quit that family. Not exactly, I said, smiling. They quit me, right before the call came in. Caleb let out a whistle. Damn, how's it feel? I looked around my messy, quiet apartment, the place I'd built my empire in silence, in solitude. Like stepping out of a coat that never fit, I said. He laughed. Proud of you, Jay, about time you upgraded. That night, I didn't code. I didn't refresh dashboards or check metrics. I curled up in the corner of my couch with a throw blanket and reheated soup and watched 3 straight hours of trash TV. It was glorious. The next morning, I woke up to a dozen texts. 3 from Mom, none of them apologies. Mom, can we talk? Mom, I don't think it's fair how you blindsided us. Mom, I raised you better than this. 1 from Dad, let's not throw away family over money. Call me. And of course Bristol. Short. To the point. Bristol. Wow, that was it. Just wow. I didn't reply. Instead, I called Priya. You still want to do that press tour? I asked. Her shriek nearly blew out my eardrum. I told you the timing was perfect. Let's show them who you are. I smiled. Let's. The next 48 hours were a blur of interviews, podcasts, email blasts, and back-end cleanups. Eleanor's name spread like wildfire. We trended on LinkedIn. Health Tech Daily called the acquisition a landmark moment in AI-assisted medicine. And somewhere in the middle of it all, I got a text from someone unexpected. Colton, not sure if this is weird, but that was badass. I ignored it. Instead, I went back to the thing that mattered, the people who saw me before the headlines. Caleb sent me flowers with a card that read, "Not invisible anymore." Priya brought over cupcakes and champagne. We popped the cork in my kitchen like it was the only room in the world that mattered. Later that night, as we sat on the floor in a sugar and bubble haze, Priya looked at me and said, "You know what's wild? You were never the black sheep. You were the shepherd. They just never looked behind them." I don't know why, but that hit me in the chest. Hard. I nodded. I think I'm finally done hurting. The press release dropped Monday at 9 a.m. sharp, and by 9:04 my inbox was a war zone. Old classmates, former coworkers, strangers from LinkedIn I hadn't spoken to since college orientation. Even a guy I ghosted after one lukewarm date at a vegan sushi spot 2 years ago messaged me. Knew you were going places. No, you didn't. But okay, I let it wash over me, the noise, the sudden flood of digital confetti. But it was the quiet I noticed most, the absence of my family. No congratulations, no we're proud of you, not even passive-aggressive subtweets from Bristol. Just silence. And that silence was louder than any standing ovation. That afternoon I was booked on a podcast about women in tech. The host, an upbeat ex-Googler with a cheerful British accent, asked a perfectly reasonable question. So Jory, who would you say believed in you the most during those early years? I hesitated, not because I didn't have an answer, but because the truthful one was, no one. No one, I said, finally smiling, and that turned out to be the best gift I ever got. The host paused, then laughed. Now that's a soundbite. I went home, pulled out my old journals from the bottom of the closet, and flipped through them. Half-coded sketches of Eleanor's earliest designs, angry letters I'd written to my parents and never sent. Budget notes, from when I had exactly $240 to my name and chose groceries over electricity. That night, I drafted an email. Subject line, transparency. Recipients, Mom, Dad, Bristol. Hey, I just wanted to say that I heard you loud and clear. You wanted to reallocate your support. Consider it accepted. Permanently. I won't be coming to any more dinners, holidays, or emotionally manipulative gift exchanges. I won't be responding to group texts. I won't be your safety net. This isn't about money. It never was. It's about the fact that I begged, quietly, for your approval for decades and got crumbs in return. So I've built a new table, and you're not invited. Best Jory, I didn't reread it. I just hit send. The next morning, I woke up to 3 reactions. From Dad. Message, received. From Bristol, you're being dramatic, but whatever, I'm over it. And from Mom, no words, just a thumbs down emoji. Not even kidding. I screenshotted it and texted it to Caleb. He responded with a single word, iconic. But the moment that truly sealed it wasn't digital. It was analog, real, flesh and blood. 2 days later I ran into Aunt Denise, my mother's estranged sister, at a coffee shop in Cambridge. We hadn't spoken in years. She spotted me first. Jory? She said cautiously. I turned, startled. Hi, wow, Denise? She smiled. I saw the news. Oh, she touched my arm gently. Your mom may never say it, but I will. You deserved better. I blinked. She continued, voice steady. I was the Jory once too. I left. Never went back. It's not easy, but it's free. We stood there for a beat too long, the clink of espresso cups and quiet jazz around us like background noise for some cosmic baton pass. "I'm proud of you," she added. 2 hours later, I got a final message from Bristol. "Bristol, just FYI, Mom's telling people you hacked your way into the deal." I stared at the screen. Then I laughed so hard I nearly dropped my phone. It was over. Not because they believed it, but because it didn't matter anymore. I could finally let go. Not to prove anything, not to punish anyone, but because I didn't need the story to change. I had simply stepped out of it. For the first time in my life, I wasn't in reaction to them. I was just Jory. Full stop. I never believed in the phrase chosen family until I built one without realizing it. After the fallout, after the silence and thumbs down emojis and unsettled guilt bait, there was no grand reinvention. I didn't shave my head or move to Bali or post cryptic Instagram quotes about phoenixes. I just kept living. And the people who mattered didn't ask me to explain myself. They just showed up. Caleb, of course, was first. He showed up to my apartment with 2 large pizzas, a gallon of ginger ale, and a plastic tiara he insisted I wear because queens deserve crowns, even if the throne is now a fully optimized AI platform. He toasted me with greasy fingers and a crooked smile. "To the most badass self-made legend I know, your family may be allergic to joy, but I am not." We ate on the floor and watched bad reality TV until 2 a.m. The kind of night that reminded me home isn't a place. It's a people. Then came Priya. She organized a surprise party disguised as a strategy session at a co-working space we used to rent by the hour when we were broke and dreaming. I walked in expecting spreadsheets and found 20 people from different phases of my life. My college roommate who used to sneak me snacks during all-nighters, a former professor who once called my code almost poetic, the nurse who beta-tested Eleanor in its roughest prototype. There were no relatives, no toasts about blood being thicker than water, but there was laughter, connection, recognition. When Priya stood up to speak, she said, "Jory didn't just build tech, she built trust, with all of us. That's rarer than a billion-dollar idea." I cried. Hard. Ugly. Full-body sobs I hadn't let myself feel in years, because for the first time I wasn't mourning a family that failed me, I was celebrating one I created. Later that week, I got an email from a girl named May Whitlock. She was 16 from Nebraska, and had read about me in a feature article on women innovators under 35. She wrote, "Everyone in my family says coding is for weirdos and boys, but I love it. I made a calculator app for my grandma's meds and it actually helped her. I thought maybe I wasn't normal, but then I read about you. Thank you for making it feel possible." I wrote back immediately. "May, weirdos rule the world, keep going. You're not alone." That's when the idea hit me. What if I could fund the next generation of outcasts? Not through my name, hell no, but through my grandmother's. Eleanor had been overlooked too, dismissed until her body told a story no one could ignore. I wanted her name to mean something different. I called my lawyer and started the paperwork for the Eleanor Foundation, a scholarship and mentorship program for young women and gender-diverse coders from underrepresented communities. No press release, no ribbon-cutting ceremony, just quiet checks and loud belief. A month after the dinner, Priya and I rented a cabin for the weekend. No tech, no notifications, just woods, wine, and reflection. Sitting by the fire, she asked, "If they called you tomorrow, your parents, would you pick up?" I thought about it longer than I expected. "Maybe," I said, "if they wanted to learn, not to rewrite history, not to justify it, but to actually hear me." She nodded. "Think they ever will?" I smiled. "No, and I'm okay with that. Because the truth is, my story didn't need them to be complete. They were a chapter. A loud, painful, formative chapter, but not the ending. The ending I was finally writing myself. I used to think boundaries were walls, cold, isolating, built to keep people out. Now I know better. They're windows. You can still see the world, but you get to decide who gets to come inside, and who has to stay out on the lawn, shouting through the glass. After that dinner, I didn't block my family. I didn't delete numbers or go scorched earth on Facebook. I simply stopped replying. I stopped explaining. I stopped trying to preempt their disappointment by performing an acceptable version of myself. I replaced performance with policy. Rule 1. I don't answer questions I didn't invite. Rule 2. I no longer set myself on fire to keep anyone else warm. Rule 3. I don't lend money to people who make me feel like a bank with baggage. It wasn't vindictive. It was math. For every hour I spent trying to please them, I could build a new Eleanor feature, mentor a scholarship kid, or just sit with a good book and not feel guilty for once. Of course, they tested the lines. 2 weeks after the acquisition, Mom emailed me a forwarded thread from her church group, some health scare about AI and robot medicine. No greeting, no context, just thoughts. You work in this stuff, right? I didn't respond. 3 days later, Dad sent a voice memo. Hey Jory, I read the interview. That was impressive. Listen, your mother's been thinking about organizing a little get-together. Nothing formal, just family. We'd love for you to come. I played it twice, then I archived it. No response, no clarification, no guilt. Because here's the thing, I wasn't trying to punish them. I was trying to heal myself, and you can't stitch up a wound if someone keeps jabbing it with the same rusty blade of, but we're family. I used to think love meant endless patience. Now I know it's about mutual recognition. And if they can't recognize me, my growth, my worth, my damn humanity, then they're not invited to the version of me I fought so hard to become. My therapist, yes, I finally got one, and she's a saint, said something that stuck. Sometimes the most radical act of love is removing your presence from places that only want your silence. So I stopped showing up to be silenced. Instead, I started showing up for myself. I donated the designer coat Mom got me years ago, the one she said would make me look less lonely at networking events. I repainted my apartment, I deleted old voicemails, I cleaned my inbox like it was an exorcism, and slowly I began to feel the space again. My space. In that space I hosted a dinner, not a fancy one, just spaghetti, garlic bread, and too much wine. Caleb spilled sauce on my rug. Priya sang off-key to Fleetwood Mac. May Whitlock joined on Zoom from Nebraska, glowing with her first scholarship award letter in hand. There were no passive-aggressive toasts, no half-hearted applause, no fake smiles pasted on with expectation. There was joy, there was freedom, there was me. After dessert, as we all sat on the floor warm and full, Caleb raised his glass. To the woman who finally learned that her silence wasn't noble, it was stolen, and who took it back. I didn't say anything. I just touched my glass to his, and felt the hum in my chest. I used to think family was something you inherited. Now I know it's something you build, on purpose. Legacy used to be a word that made me flinch. It felt like a chain, something passed down whether you wanted it or not, a burden disguised as tradition. In my family, legacy meant Bristol's ballet trophies on the mantle, Dad's golf tournaments framed in the den, and an old monogrammed family Bible no one ever read but always used as decor. For me, it was the absence that was inherited. But now I get to define it. It started with a letter, handwritten, on paper. I hadn't done that in years. I addressed it to a girl named Lydia, a sophomore in Detroit who'd just been awarded an Eleanor Foundation scholarship. She'd built a medical alert prototype using recycled circuit boards, and it worked. She tested it on her little brother who has epilepsy. It worked. In the letter I wrote, "You may feel invisible sometimes. Like the world isn't made for your kind of mind. That's okay. You're not here to fit. You're here to shift. Keep building." She sent back a drawing. It was a sketch of me, at least I think it was me, wearing a crown made of binary code. I framed it. I started mentoring one student per quarter one-on-one. No headlines, no PR, just quiet calls at night, helping them debug a project, prep for a grant, or shake off the sting of another investor who asked, "Do you have a male co-founder?" I gave talks at community centers, not tech expos, just rooms full of kids with laptops held together by tape and dreams held together by grit. I told them the truth, that the people who love you after you succeed aren't always the ones who helped you get there. And that's okay. Not long after, I got an offer to do a TED Talk. I turned it down. Not because I was scared, but because I'd already said what I needed to say. In emails, in code, in the quiet choices I made daily to build something better than what I came from. One afternoon, while cleaning out my storage unit, I found a box marked, "Family Stuff." Inside were all the old tokens I'd held onto out of some sense of obligation. Bristol's birthday cards, Mom's wedding pearls she gave me just in case, a baby book with half the pages blank after the age of 3. I sat with it for a while, then I closed the lid, walked downstairs, and left it by the donation bin. Because that version of my past didn't deserve a pedestal, it deserved perspective. Instead, I filled a new box: photos from Eleanor's first product launch, notes from scholarship recipients, a sticky note from Caleb that said, "You're the reason the lights are on," and the original sketch I drew of the app's wireframe, on a napkin from a diner at 2 a.m., I labeled it, Real Legacy. It wasn't about making anyone proud anymore. It was about honoring every version of me that pushed forward when no one clapped. The girl who coded in basements, the woman who sat through dinners full of daggers, the founder who gave away credit just to avoid conflict, and the survivor who finally said, enough. The Holston name wasn't theirs anymore, it was mine now, and I was building something with it that would last, not in marble, but in people. The morning everything truly settled, I was alone. By choice for once. No meetings, no press, no friends clinking glasses or mentors nodding in approval. Just me, a cup of coffee, and the sunrise pressing through my window like a quiet revelation. I'd moved to a new place, a small rooftop flat on the edge of the city. Not extravagant, not flashy, just mine. The floors still creaked like old thoughts and the windows fogged up on humid days, but it felt like breathing without resistance. I sat on the balcony, barefoot, legs tucked under me, and listened to the world without trying to speak over it. No agenda, no defense, no emotional armor strapped on for battle, just stillness. In that silence, I finally asked myself the question I'd been avoiding for years. What do I actually want? Not to prove, not to earn, not to compensate, just want. The answer came like mist, soft, slow, honest, peace. Not the performative kind, not the type you post with a filtered photo and a caption about healing. I wanted the kind of peace that didn't need an audience, that didn't require explaining why I stopped calling, or why I no longer sent money to people who forgot my birthday. I didn't want revenge. I didn't want an apology. I just wanted a life that felt like mine. And somehow, without fanfare, I had it. There were still loose threads, of course. A message from Dad I hadn't opened, a Christmas invitation forwarded from Bristol that I'd quietly archived. The ghost of expectation still lingered, but it no longer haunted me, because I'd made peace with the version of myself that had once begged to belong. She tried. God, did she try, and I was proud of her. But I wasn't her anymore. Now when I thought of family, I pictured different faces. People who listened when I spoke. Who saw brilliance instead of burden, who knew that jewelry didn't mean safety net or black sheep or backup generator. It meant whole. That's the thing no one tells you about cutting ties. The absence doesn't echo forever, it softens, it clears, it makes room. I sipped my coffee, pulled the blanket tighter around my shoulders and whispered to no one, I'm good. Because I am. Have you ever been the quiet one at the table, the one who gave more than they got, who stayed longer than they should have, hoping someone would finally see them? I know what that feels like. And if you're nodding along right now, I want you to know, you're not broken, you're not too much, and you sure as hell aren't alone. Your worth isn't decided by who claps for you, it's carved by every hard choice you made when no one was watching, every boundary you drew, every time you said no more and meant it, even if your voice trembled. So here's what I want to know. What was your moment, the one where you finally chose yourself? Drop it in the comments, I'll be reading, I promise. And if my story resonated with you, even a little, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who's still stuck at that dinner table waiting to be noticed. They deserve to know, it's okay to leave. It's okay to shine. It's okay to build your own table. You're not here to fit. You're here to shift.